allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I believe we don't have any amendments to the agenda, so I just need approval adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Tina? Tina, are you there? We got to do a roll call on Tina.
Sorry, I have like 47 tabs open and I lost you in my go-to meeting. Yes, I'm good. Can I vote, Ryan? Is that okay if I'm not there?
No, I was told she can because on a medical
Yep.
situation.
Medical quarantine. Okay,
Yeah.
yes, I'm good.
She got medical quarantine, she can vote. So Brian and I discussed that earlier today. So I will just do a roll call on Tina's vote afterwards. Tina?
Yes.
Passes
Am I approving
five.
something?
Passes 5-0-0. Just review the minutes from January 6th regular meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Passes 5-0-0. Accounts payable, Horvath.
Okay, so we'll scroll down to 76917, the fourth quarter for the building inspecting fees. And then the 76925, the ambulance assessment there. And then we got two bond payments out of here. 76931, the 2021A bond payment. And then 76938, the 2010B bond payment. I guess make a motion to approve the January 2022 in the amount of $308,217.51.
Any questions for Chris? Oh, sorry, Bob. You second it?
I second that.
Any further questions for Chris? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tina? Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. Thanks, Chris. Public comments. Individuals may address the city council about any item of concern. Speaker must state their name and limit their remarks to 5 minutes. Any public comments? I will close the public comment portion. We'll jump to 8A, Emerald Ash Borer presentation. I believe it was Jonathan.
Yes, thank you. I'm Jonathan Ostis with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. Unfortunately, I'm speaking with you because emerald ash borer has been found in your community, and so I'm just going to give you a broad overview of kind of what that means, what the insect is, and what are a couple options for dealing with it. If you have any questions at any point, please feel free to stop me. I just want to make sure everybody gets any questions that they have asked and answered. So with that, I'll kind of get started and go through what it is, where it is, and the couple options for dealing with it, and how to strategize that. So that'll get started. So just to give you a broad overview, emerald ash borer is a metallic wood-boring insect. It's an invasive species. It was found in North America in 2002 in the Detroit, Michigan area and Windsor, Ontario area. So it likely arrived sometime in the early 90s, and it went a decade without being detected. And once it was, there was kind of widespread ash mortality within the Detroit area and the Windsor, Ontario area. So at that point, lots of infested nursery stock and firewood had gone out to many other locations around the country, kind of setting off the rapid spread of this insect throughout North America. So at this point, it's now in 35 states. and 5 Canadian provinces, and it was first found in Minnesota in 2009, where it's now in 30 counties and continue to grow. So it's a growing problem, and Minnesota has over 1 billion ash trees, which is the most of any state in the lower 48. So here's just kind of the broad agenda. I'll go over the life cycle real quick and what the host trees are, how to recognize it, and then regulations and management. So the life cycle, the adult beetle is active in the summer months, so it typically emerges in late May in the southern half of Minnesota. It can be a little bit earlier, a little bit later, depending on how quickly things heat up in the spring. So those adult beetles begin flying around at the end of May. They then mate, and the females lay between 60 and 90 eggs apiece, and they can lay upwards of 200 eggs. So you can see how that population can build quite quickly. And they begin laying their eggs in the mid to upper canopy, and they work their way down the tree. So they start at the top, so they won't kill off the tree too early, and it gives them years of food to lay their eggs on. After the eggs are laid, they hatch, and the larvae burrow through the bark and begin feeding on the phloem layer. And so that's the layer, the vascular system of the tree that transports the water and nutrients between the root system and the crown. So they then go through their larval stage of development as they grow. Then once they finish that, they chew what is called a pupal chamber there in that center picture, where they kind of fold over. They're done feeding at that point. And that's where they will, once it heats up again the next spring, pupate and turn into the adult beetle and start the process all over again. So Minnesota has a 1-year and 2-year life cycle, and so you can have any larval stage of emerald ash borer present at any given time of the year. So how emerald ash borer kills a tree? It's really the number of them that build up. So a tree can withstand a few larvae feeding on the phloem, but once you have thousands of them in there, that's when it's overtaken and effectively killed. So as you can see, it goes from a couple to thousands of them over kind of a 5 to 6 year period. And so really the issue with emerald ash borer is it goes undetected for a number of years. And once that population builds up in an area, you start to see widespread tree mortality in a short period of time. And so the main issue with this is it really breaks municipal budgets, and it can be very expensive for homeowners depending on how many ash trees they may have in their yard. So those trees are all true ash trees, so Fraxinus species. We have 3 types in Minnesota. It's white ash, black ash, and green ash. I'll show you on a map where they're kind of distributed after this, but as you can see, they all have opposite branching, compound leaves, and 5 to many leaflets. And so here's a general picture of the bark. So if once you learn how to identify an ash tree, you will see how prevalent they are across the landscape. Many ash trees, well, first of all, they're very hardy and can grow in poor site locations. So they are often planted after Dutch elm disease came through in the 70s and 80s as a preferred tree in boulevard settings and in landscaped areas. And so you can see throughout the state, green ash is throughout the entire state and is the most common one in right-of-ways and in landscape settings. Then we have 2/3 of the state with black ash growing naturally. We have huge swaths of black ash forests in the north central part of the state. And then we have pockets of white ash in the eastern part of the state in the more upland areas. So all of them are highly susceptible. And then I just have some of the common cultivars there on the right side of the screen. So how to recognize emerald ash borer? There's a few main ways to do it. It's really the one that's most common for being able to confirm it is seeing that S-shaped feeding gallery that they make in that phloem layer, so on the surface of the wood. So if you see a gallery, insect feeding gallery where it has that tight S-shaped serpentine-like thing back and forth on an ash tree, that is emerald ash borer. It's the only type of insect that'll make that feeding pattern in an ash tree. There's other native insects that'll do that in birch trees or in oak trees or in poplar trees. But if you find that S-shaped feeding gallery in an ash tree, you know it is emerald ash borer. The emerald ash borer larva itself is another way to identify it. What's unique about the larva is it has 2 little spine-like projections that's circled there in red in that picture in the top right. So there's two little black pincers that stick out of the tail end of it. And so if you pull an insect larva out of a tree, out of an ash tree, and it has those two little pincers, you know it is indeed emerald ash borer. And then the adult beetle is another way to identify it. They're bright, shiny green. They're a pretty cool looking insect actually, and have a magenta colored abdomen. They're about a 1/2 inch long and an 1/8 inch wide. Typically, people don't find the adults as they're usually kind of up in the canopy and out of your general eyesight and hanging out above your head. Occasionally, people do find the beetle itself, but it's not as common. And then lastly, there is the D-shaped exit hole. So if you find an emergence hole on a tree that's about 1/8 inch wide, has a flat side in either the top or the bottom, as it makes that kind of D-shaped, that is indicative of emerald ash borer. But I will say it's pretty hard to find the exit holes, and it's not worth your time looking for that if you're looking for evidence of infestation on an ash tree. So spend your time looking for the top two things. If you do find an exit hole, if you have permission, it's best to peel back the bark to look for the actual insect feeding gallery underneath to confirm it. So here's just kind of mini common lookalikes along with emerald ash borer that's circled in yellow there in the top left. Oftentimes in May and in June, we get lots of calls saying people found emerald ash borer, and it's typically the 6-spotted tiger beetle that is often running across the ground or on the sidewalk or on somebody's deck that they see. It's got that bright iridescent green, and it's the one that's most commonly confused. So what to look for? The best way to spot emerald ash borer is woodpecker damage. So woodpeckers really like to feed on the immature larva underneath the bark. And so what they'll do is they'll kind of fleck off a little bit of that outer bark, creating what we call a blonding or a flaking. And then within those areas, you'll see kind of shallow, oval-shaped, dime-sized woodpeck holes that are going just deep enough to get to that insect larva. And so that is the most common thing that we can see, especially in the wintertime, to detect it early. And so this is how it was detected in Zumbrota. A couple coworkers were traveling through the area and noticed a number of trees throughout town that were showing signs of infestation. And so as you can see in that picture on that right, it really is, it's just kind of dime size and just to the surface of the wood. There's woodpeckers will go after other insects. So, and typically some of the other insects that will be in ash trees tend to go deeper into the heartwood. So they'll have to go deeper to get them and create more of a shadow in that hole, and it won't have the same appearance. And it starts in the upper canopy. So like I said, emerald ash borer starts at the top and works its way down on a tree. So it's usually starting in branches 3 to 6 inches in diameter, where that bark has transitioned from smooth to rough, and most commonly on the south-southwest facing side of the tree, the side that gets the most amount of sunlight is where they lay their eggs first. So another symptom you might see is bark splits. So the tree will try to peel around that initial feeding gallery from the larva. The calf tissue will grow, and then that bark that was attached to the wood will split open once it's detached as the tree grows and create that vertical split where you can see that gallery in between there. And then there is also canopy thinning. So with emerald ash borer, it's not just dead branches in the crown, it's an overall thinning of the canopy. There's fewer leaves, smaller leaves, and just more light coming through. And as you can see in that picture on the right, it gets kind of real bushy around the stem of the tree. And so you can just see that there's a lot more light that can penetrate through the canopy. And unfortunately, canopy thinning really doesn't happen until the tree is pretty far gone. It isn't really noticeable to the average homeowner until it's probably too far gone to have any other option besides removal. So in general, this is how the progression of symptoms go. That first year of infestation, there's no signs. There's small larvae present. That second year, you have more emerald ash borer building up in the tree. There's a chance there might be some woodpecking in that second year. It's really, you're not likely to catch it unless you're looking really closely and keeping good tabs on your trees. It's really in that third year, if you're paying attention, you'll be able to catch the woodpecker damage. It'll be in a number of branches throughout the canopy, and you'll be able to see those black spots with those dime-sized woodpeck holes on them. And so each year, as that number of EAB build up in that tree, it's really that year 4 is when residents notice the canopy impacts. And then at that point, your tree is pretty far gone, and in the next 1 or 2 years, it'll be dead from emerald ash borer. So really, on average, it takes 5 to 6 years for emerald ash borer to kill a tree. And once it's in an area, you know, like I was talking, the insect pressure builds up, and you begin to have many trees kind of dying in the same time frame. So the distribution, it just shows the national map. It's throughout pretty much most of the Midwest and the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic and into the Southeast. And you can see there's infestations in Boulder, Colorado, and it did not fly there on its own. So this is a prime example of infested material like firewood being brought, you know, several hundred miles away from any other previous noted locations. Emerald ash borer itself can fly up to 5 or 6 miles, but the average spread rate from an infestation, natural spread, is about 1 to 2 miles a year. So it's really that human-assisted movement of infested material that helps really increase that spread quite a bit. So the MDA has an EAB status map at this URL above. It shows where confirmed infested trees have been found. So when you zoom into an area, the actual infested tree locations will populate, and you can use that to measure your closest, how close you are to the closest known infested tree. So this is updated nightly with reports from around the state that are confirmed. And so here's just a zoomed out version of that. It also shows which counties are quarantined for emerald ash borer. And we put a generally infested layer around the known infested trees. So that really just describes that even if you don't see signs or symptoms in your tree, if you're within that generally infested area, there's a good chance your tree already has emerald ash borer in it at some level. It's because we do that just due to the cryptic nature of the insect, and that you know, it's already spread further beyond what we can actually see on the ground. So just zooming in, you can see you're in an area that's considered generally infested, and it was found in, you know, I-90 and 61 in 2011. It was found in St. Paul in 2009, Rochester 2014. So it's been building up and spreading. It's now finally reached you. So the emerald ash borer population is probably quite high as it reaches you. So that insect pressure is quite high. As we zoom in closely, it's been found throughout much of the city. And those are just individual points, meaning there's a lot more out there. So regulations I'll just touch on quickly. This is what happens anytime emerald ash borer is found in a new county. Your county's been quarantined for a while now, so it's nothing new. But what's under regulation is any ash material, any stage of emerald ash borer, and any hardwood firewood that's considered anything 4 feet in length or less. It can move around in the quarantine areas and adjacent quarantine counties. You just can't take that material from a quarantine county to a non-quarantine county. You can bring stuff from a non-quarantine county into a quarantine county, but then you cannot bring it back out. If you have any of those regulated materials that you need to move out of a quarantine area into a non-quarantine area, you have to work with my colleague Danielle at MDA to come up with a compliance agreement to basically identify a protocol to where you won't potentially spread the insect. So just again, the definition of firewood, anything cut to 4 feet, think the less, and we do all hardwood firewood because the average person can't identify the type of wood in a cut pile of firewood. So, and we also have an exterior quarantine, so firewood can't enter from other states and Canada, can't leave the quarantine. And then firewood can move around inside the quarantine, obviously, and then move around outside the quarantine. And if the firewood you have has a heat treated certified logo that you can see in that bottom right, that means it's been heat treated to make sure it's free of all pests and is safe to move freely throughout the state in or out of the quarantine. I think there's 10 or 11 businesses that produce that type of firewood, and they're often found at many of the gas stations and big box stores. So this is my colleague's contact information if you have any questions or have business that needs to potentially get a compliance agreement to move material around. So please feel free to contact her or feel free to contact me and I can get you in touch with her as well. So this is just to drive the point home. Here's just a piece of ash. There's no outward signs of anything wrong with it. You peel off the wood, you can see the gallery. There's still nothing there, but when you dig in, the larva is about 1/4 inch into the sapwood, ready to emerge, when it heats up again the next spring. So emerald ash borer can emerge up to 2 years after the firewood has been split. So you can see how bringing wood someplace and letting it sit, it can be a dangerous thing. So that's why we have our campaign, Don't Move Firewood. It's best to source your wood locally where you're going to be camping or vacationing. And yeah. So moving on to management. Our best management practices suggest trying to avoid doing removals of ash trees and pruning during the adult flight season. So that's May through September. So really, it's best to, if you can, conduct any removals and pruning in the dormant months, so when the adult beetles aren't actively flying around. Emerald ash borer will often reinfest the same tree it emerges from or the tree next to it. And when you remove trees in the summertime, the adult beetles that are actually active in the canopy will fly out further to new locations and help spread more quickly. So really, if you can avoid it, don't do that work in the summertime. Do it in the wintertime where that material can then be brought to another location, disposed of if you can't keep it on your property. So that is the ideal way to deal with it. Obviously, storms happen, and once you become heavily infested, you may not have the time to only do that work in the wintertime. So if you have to do that work on infested trees in the summertime, skip it before you move it if you can, or leave the wood on site, or at the very least, cover your load as you move it to a location where it's going to be processed. So here are your basic options. You have tree removals and you have insecticide treatments. Tree removals can be done before emerald ash borer. Tree removals can be focused on trees that show woodpecker damage, so signs of infestation, and then obviously dead and hazardous trees. Ash trees are quite hazardous after they die. They usually, a large majority of them tend to fail within 2 years after they die, so they break and they fall apart and become more hazardous. And this can become a big issue for residents that have maybe nice large shade trees in their yard next to their house. It can greatly increase the cost of removal. So really, we try to encourage people to make a decision earlier before that tree is completely dead, so you don't have those increased costs associated with it and they don't have to bring in bigger equipment to deal with the trees. There's been plenty of accidents over the last decade around the country of people working in dead ash trees from emerald ash borer and having them fail and snap, or having property damage and hazards like that. So it is important to try to stress that to you. If you have ash trees in your yards that could damage your property or your neighbor's property, to deal with them in a timely fashion. Treatments can be done before EDBs arrive, or it can be done after the tree is lightly infested. So it can be preventative or therapeutic. Really, once a tree has more than 30% canopy decline, it's no longer a good candidate for treatment because it can't properly uptake the chemical and fully protect the tree. So what you really need to kind of think about when you're deciding whether to remove or treat a tree is, where is EAB? How healthy is the tree in question? How large is it? How easy is it to replace and have something grow and replace that tree? And how many do you have to deal with? So for a city, it's important to know how many ash trees you have on public property and in areas that they could be potential hazards. So inventory of ash is pretty vital to know what the resource is and how much it may cost you in the long run. Treatments on average are about, it depends on how many people are applying them in the area, how many businesses you have that do them. They can be done in-house too if you have licensed pesticide applicators. So it can vary. So I mean, I'd say anywhere from $7 to $15 a diameter range for a treatment. So there's a couple different chemicals that are systemic insecticides that are most commonly used. We have a handout on our website, a homeowner's guide to insecticide selection. But the two main ones, one's a imidacloprid-based one, which is a neonicotinoid, which isn't great for pollinators, and that's typically applied as a soil drench. And then the main one used by tree care professionals is emamectin benzoate, and a common name for that is called triage, and that is a trunk injection method, and that is good for 2 years. So the soil drenches are only protected for 1 year, and that has to be reapplied. And where the trunk injection of the emamectin benzoate is guaranteed for 2 years, and it's quite effective in that 3rd year. So it's unfortunately not a one and done thing. It's something that has to continually be reapplied, but depending on the situation, if you have a nice large mature tree in your yard that gives you lots of property value, lots of shade in the summertime, it may be worth spending that money every couple of years to maintain that tree, as opposed to spending $1,000 to $2,000 to remove it. And you could have a large mature tree on your property for a much longer period of time. Treated trees also do provide a good way to control the rate at which you remove and replace trees. So it's besides protecting the tree, it can help you deal with the timetable of how many trees you have to remove in a given year. Since emerald ash borer populations build up and end up causing tree mortality in a relatively short amount of time, where you have lots of dead trees on the landscape. So that's one reason it can be used, and knowing that you're not going to treat that tree forever into the future, but just to kind of drop that timetable that you have to deal with it. It's also okay, and then just another mention on this. So there are chemicals you can buy over the counter from your local store to treat your trees. In general, those are soil drenches, and if your tree is bigger than 48 inches in circumference or 15 inches at diameter, 15-inch diameter at breast height, it is best to hire a licensed pesticide applicator and tree care professional to do that treatment. The stuff that you can buy at the store usually isn't rated for trees over that size. And so if you try to use those chemicals, they won't be a strong enough formulation to actually protect the tree, and you'll have your tree succumb to emerald ash borer anyways. So if you have a larger mature tree, it really is best to have it professionally treated. And so reporting, we depend on people around the state that learn what the signs and symptoms are to look for. We do as much survey as we can, but it helps to have educated citizens letting us know when they see stuff. So if you do happen to see infested trees outside of that generally infested area, please report that to us. Take pictures if you can, and be descriptive of what you see and what the location is. And so you can either contact your local designated city staff, who can then get in touch with me, or you can use the state's Arrest the Pest email, voicemail, or go to our website and use the form on there to report something. You can do that with any invasive species as well, any terrestrial invasive. So now I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody have any questions for Jonathan?
I have a quick one, Mayor, if I may. So are there requirements for like tree removal companies to comply with not moving trees from areas? Is there like a registration system, or is there an education that goes out, like continuing education?
Yeah. So I mean, you're allowed to move material within the quarantine boundaries. So, which is a pretty large area. We do, there is the tree care registry that the Department of Agriculture runs. So any company that does any sort of tree care work, whether it be a landscape company or an actual just tree care company, they have to register every year with the tree care registry. And that's the way we have their information, and we send them out pest alerts and opportunities for training. I do provide outdoor field workshops here in the spring. So in March, I'll have kind of hour-long sessions in a number of different locations where we invite tree care professionals and public works employees and the interested public to come do an hour-long session and learn about how to identify emerald ash borer and learn about the biology and management of it.
Very cool. Thanks. Hey, Brian, do you know how many are those ash trees that are in the park that line the road going in that we replaced? We replaced the last invasive beetle tree thing with.
Yeah, they are, Tina.
Yep, I believe they are, and that was the question I was going to ask. We've got a nice a tree-lined drive into our park, a lot of beautiful trees, nice canopy. We'd rather not take all those down at once, but what is the recommended course of action for something like that? Could we do every 2 out of every 3, and then plant another one in there, or plant a tree to start going up, or what's the recommendation there?
Yeah, so that you don't have to do everyone in the same year or anything like that. This is where doing a limited term of treatment might be helpful to where you will get some protection of the untreated trees as well, and then you can a slower timetable remove those trees and replace them, giving those newly planted trees more time to grow and become larger in size and keep the general kind of look of the park. It really denudes a park when you have all one species that get taken out within a couple of years. So I would plant, it's now that it's there and it's, probably in pretty relatively high numbers that it reached you, don't be slow on removals because it will catch up with you. But if there are trees there that are in good condition, it might be worth treating some of them this next spring, summer, so that you can maintain some of those large mature ones as the other ones succumb to EAB and have to be taken down and you plant other stuff.
Okay. All right. That gives us a little bit of a insight on another course of action. So appreciate that.
Yeah. Are you guys planning at all to try and apply to that DNR grant that's open right now?
We would love to do that. The pretty tight time frame, and there's quite a bit of work that goes into that as far as inventory of trees and plan and that type of thing. It might be more of a year from now if that grant will still be available. Something for us to move into at that time.
Yeah, there'll be other grants in the future. Just may not be that serious, but there should be other opportunities. I'm also available to come meet you on site in town during regular hours to go over things if wanted. So
that's something I'll probably do, Jonathan. I'll probably reach out to you, meet with you at some point here. I think that'd be the best thing to do.
Yeah, it's a little easier to explain things kind of one-on-one or in person, and when you're looking at examples. So
good.
Hey, Brian, we might be at Tree City, USA already because we're going to have to count all our trees anyways. Now we're going to know.
There we go.
Applications half done.
Might as well count them all.
Right?
It'll help in the future. I'm sure there's something else coming. So
that's true.
Sounds good. Any more questions for Jonathan? Thanks for your time. Great presentation, Jonathan.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 8B, Police Sergeant MOU for 2022. Brian.
Yeah, we hired the police sergeant position, and then I had spoken with Jay Marr from LELS, the law enforcement union, and we want to work that position into the contract. There's a few language things that we need to have in there. Rather than opening up the contract now, we chose to do an MOU, which is what you've got in your packets there. There's some language defining the position, some hours, and then the real nuts and bolts of the language that they were looking for was something to preserve longevity. Someone moving from an officer position that they've been there for a long time into the sergeant position, you want to make sure that longevity carries along with and it doesn't start over in case there's a occasion for individual in that position may have to step back for some reason to an officer position, for whatever reasoning that might be, but they wanted that protection in there, and I think that's reasonable. So you also have the salary schedule on the MOU. So rather than opening the full contract, MOU is here, and we're looking for approval on that. And then we're up for negotiation for the full contract this next year. We'll start that in June or so when we have the budget more in line, and then we'll work all this language into the full contract at that point. I did review this with the Personnel Committee as well.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding for the police sergeant position.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Tina?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. Thanks, Brian. 8C, American Rescue Plan Act requests. Mr. Grunham.
Yes, we were continuing our meetings with the ARPA committee, and we came up with 4 items that are ready to be approved that the committee moved along in the process to bring back to the council. There are the 5 horsepower jockey pump VFDs at the North Booster Station, GIS system for city infrastructure documentation and tablet. Mike and his crew will get them some tools, and they can document all of our utility shutoffs, water lines, sewer lines, everything. We hired WHKS to do that a while back, and my understanding is Rick Lohman took a whole summer and walked around, and that was a great help and got everything, there somewhat for the most part. But as we go, if we do it continuously, we can do a better job with that. And along those lines, a 2-year subscription to the county GIS system. Right now, we can see the city boundaries and the parcels, but we can't see all of our utilities and all of our zoning and all of that. We would all have access to all of that on that GIS system, and up to date, because of Mike and his crew doing all that work. So we'd like to move into that. And then the big one is the new financial system. Committee thought that was important to move forward with. There's a lot of advantages to that. And so the first approval, we'll be looking to approve $117,937. There's some change there probably too, but for those 4 items, and then we'll go back and talk about more items at the next meeting. So that's what we'll be looking at for approval tonight. But there is an update on that. When the original rule contained a provision to use a revenue loss calculation, and those dollars that would be contained in that revenue loss could be used for anything relating to governmental services. But kind of a complicated calculation. But when the final rule came out, the federal government said, we're just going to assume a $10 million revenue loss for everybody. And you can opt to use a standard allowance up to $10 million, which, but of course it's capped at your allocation. So we can claim a standard allowance on all of our allocation, which frees up those dollars and all the nitty gritty reporting for, very narrow areas. So we could use that for any governmental, any part of government. And I did have an email with Daniel Lightfoot from the League of Minnesota Cities. That's in your packet as well, confirming my interpretation that it is correct. And so when we go back to meet with the committee, we'll be talking a lot about that and how we want to proceed from there. Whether we just want to use the rest of the dollars, for governmental things, which will free up some dollars theoretically to get out into the community to, whatever programs that we deem necessary or come up with. But anyway, for tonight, those 4 items, we'd entertain or look for approval from the council to move forward.
I'll make a motion to approve the $117,937 for those 4 items.
I'll second it.
Any further discussions?
I'd
All
just
in
like to say thank you to the committee who's been working tirelessly at this, because the rules change every time every month. So they've really done a good job of like looking forward and how to best use these dollars. So I just wanted to say I appreciate their time.
Perfect. All in favor? All right. Tina?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. Thanks, Brian. 8D, Public Works Wastewater Year-End Review. Mike?
So this is the first time I've gave a year-end review for you, but I think it's important for you guys to see what we got going on. Public Works had a busy year, and for not having any real big projects, I would say that it seemed busier than normal. The Public Works and wastewater staff continue to stay busy with the day-to-day operations of the city, including plowing snow, street repairs, sewer cleaning, taking care of the parks, overall day-to-day operations of the city. Wastewater continues to monitor wells, booster stations, keeping records on all this with reports to the MPCA and the Department of Health, as well as general maintenance of the plant, wells, booster stations, monthly flushing of dead ends, and spring and fall flushing of the water mains. There was upgrades to the lift stations that was all brought to you guys earlier, lift stations and the VFDs at the North Booster. So I'd like to thank the staff of the Public Works, Larry Zielsdorf, Ron Swenson, Chris Mack, Paul Zielsdorf, and Jeff Myers. The Park Board, they were very dedicated in making some improvements this year. We had the few items with the partnership with the VFW and the new Veterans Memorial. That's to the west of the softball fields. A new bathroom is being added up by the shelter north of the Kids Kingdom. That's a work in progress right now. The cement slab for the hockey rink, but also multi-use slab for pickleball, shuffleboard, and some new basketball hoops will be added to that. That was $40,000 in that cement slab, so they'll put good use to that. Pool renovations, including resurfacing and sandblasting and painting the pool. There was new plumbing inside. The mechanic room, removal of the diving boards, replaced with the climbing wall. That came out to $110,000 that was spent at the pool this year. Future works progress include resurfacing the Park Road. Just what we got done talking about was ash tree removal. There's a lot of ash trees out at the park. And we're working towards a campground. That'll be just north of where we're at now is what the plan is for that. And we're working on a grant for that now. Public Works. We saw a number of projects this year, including the completion of County Road 6, which we replaced the sewer line from Walnut to the County 6 Boulevard. And then there was a number of other water hydrants that were moved and stuff, and some gate valves that were adjusted. West Avenue sidewalk and the 4th Street sidewalk, we were finished this year. That was in conjunction with the school project going on. And then we had a number of boulevard trees along with storm sewer replacements and intersection improvements along West Avenue that were made along with the project. This year, again, mill and overlay projects were completed at Charleston's and Sugarloaf areas, as well as chip sealing and crack sealing, the Meyerhofer addition. And these projects are vital to the overall maintenance and upkeep of our streets. And we keep working with this. We spend approximately $40,000 a year on chip sealing and crack sealing. And then we had $230,000 in mill and overlays this year that we spent. Other projects completed this year were the addition of 2 subdivisions, Highlands 4th and 6th, which added about 47 houses to or lots to this area of the Highlands area. Also, water main extensions, that's on the bottom right corner. That was done out at the DFA. They extended some water down there, and we're going to the south again, and then we're hoping to get that water main extended at some point across to the west of the highway again there. The wastewater plant, we had upgrades again to the north boosters by adding VFDs, as well as upgrades to the lift station, and which serves the west side of Highway 52. And that lift station had been in since the 70s with no major upgrades. So that was time for that to be done. Projects coming up and continued projects. Of course, we have big project for next year is going to be Jefferson Drive. And we're going to have our next meeting for that, public meeting next on January 26th. Continued support on our sidewalk replacement, as well as adding a trail systems to our subdivisions, continued boulevard tree removal and replacements. We have a lot of older trees in town. Continued general maintenance on our buildings. The fire hall is one of the major ones now that we're working on, trying to get the roof done there. We have always continuing issues with the roof there, and so we need to get a new roof on that. One of the big items that we continue to work on is the looping of the water main on the west side of the industrial park. We've been working on this for a while, but that all going hand in hand with, we always had that discussion about that water tower out there. The water tower is old, and if we can get that water main looped to serve the dairy and the west side, then we would look at the possibility of removing that tower. Also, staff tries to find some better access to our ground storage reservoir up there. We've been working with some residents around that area to try to figure out a better access to our ground storage area. As the city grows, so does the storm sewer infrastructure. We have a number of repairs on pipes. That picture up there was storm sewer repair up by the school. With the Highlands 6, it added 3 new ponds to our stormwater retention systems. That brings us up to 11 ponds. They continue maintenance on those ponds, removal of trees and mowing them. And the trail system, the bridge needs work and plans have been laid out. We've had plans for the bridge. That's the ground storage reservoir. That's the access we have now up there. And then the bridge layout, we need work on the bridge, and we had plans for it. We're probably going to have to decide what kind of a direction we have to go, fixing the old one, or if we're going to replace it with a new one. And then, of course, the trail needs to be a lot of work on the trail with overlay on the trail. And we'd like to see the bridge done first before we overlay the trails, just so we don't get a lot of construction traffic on that. A lot of discussion, as always, our focus on the reconstruction town. Big ones coming up will be 6th Street West, Mill Street, and then another project that's coming up that we're going to have to discuss some more is the Christ Lutheran School project and what we're going to have to do with that intersection out there. Lastly, our mill and overlay projects need to keep moving forward. There you can see that's where we've failed in the past of keeping up with the chip sealing and crack sealing, and then we have the castings that are all above ground there and they're hard on the snow plows. But we have 6th Street, Mill Street, and West Avenue. There's some on West Avenue, and then our alleys are the same way, or some of our alleys. Still have to keep up work on them and get them done. City does the best we can, I believe, with the residents and keeping the taxpayers' best interest in mind when planning for the future of the city. There's an awful a lot to account for, of course, and can't all be done at once. These projects were completed in the project list are all done with the residents in mind, and what makes the most sense at the time. These projects are all very fluid and they change over courses of a year, and just like a lot of the projects we did this year. Then we also had the recycling. We got that back in this year, and that's a great asset to the community. Then I think lastly, I think we're on the slides, we're probably still working on the continued work on the sanitary district. And that's going to be a big project moving forward for us, is working on the sanitary district. And what that'll all come down to, but hopefully, just a huge cost savings again for the taxpayers. Just want to thank again all the staff that makes all this stuff happen. Office are very crucial to the day-to-day operations, and Brian and Kim and Miranda and Dylan, everybody works really hard in here to make all this stuff happen, and it's a lot of time for everybody. And also with you guys as council people, it's always, without your support, this stuff wouldn't happen. So it's greatly appreciated with the support of you guys on all these projects. And like I said, it's going to take some time to get to where we need to be, but we keep plugging away at it and we'll get there. So thanks for everything.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to say thank you for your staff and you that work so hard, especially yourself, and helping with the infrastructure and the public works. Any questions or comments for Mike?
Well, thank you. Good work. Tell the team good work.
Thanks, Mike. Well, you got a lot of work into that water looping and doing the sanitary district, so you work hard. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, the whole crew is just phenomenal. I do a wonderful job. I guess as a citizen, I never really realized how many things Mike and his staff are involved in. If we need anything done, that's who we call, and they get it done for us. And I think as we continue to give them resources to accomplish things, they're gonna keep making good things happen. I know we want to get more roads done and all of that, and they, we will, and they will, as we can. But yeah, they just do a phenomenal job. And Mike, thank you, and your staff is it just incredible amount of work gets done every year.
Perfect. Thanks, Mike. 8E, capital planning request for proposal. Brian.
Yeah, along those lines, we're faced with an ever-growing list of capital improvement projects, from roads to building maintenance projects to a pool possibly at some point, all of that stuff. I look back to see when the last time we did a capital improvement a plan, and it appears to me that it was 2003. Capital improvement plan will provide us a good guide moving forward on, it'll help us to study what projects we need to do, get a handle on all that. And then the consultant would help us to map out, when projects could happen, how they could be funded, keeping the taxpayers in mind without having big spikes, keeping everything, relatively flat or increasing slightly. So I think moving into a capital plan, it would be a big asset for us as a city. So staff would recommend approving going forward with the request for proposals for a capital plan. I spoke with other administrators that have had this done recently, and cost right around $10,000, give or take. We'll see when we get the proposals in, but and there are different ways that different companies, some of them don't charge a lot of anything hardly until they're involved with the funding of projects, and that's how they make their money. But we'd like to move forward with the request for proposal. I did talk to Bill Angerman earlier today. I sent the RFP to him just to review, because our city engineer will be involved as well, of course, because he's going to need to help us with costs and things on projects that we have slated on the books now and future projects. And he recommended a few changes to the RFP, so the wording will be largely the same, but with just a few minor changes if we're approved to move forward.
So I just need approval to proceed with the proposal.
Makes sense.
Yes, and
So it's just for the RFP, not for the funding of it?
right. No, yeah, just so I'll send out the RFP, we'll look at the proposals back, and then I'll bring them back. We'll look at them and decide at that time with the content and the cost, if it's something we want to move forward with, and then which company we would like to move forward with.
Sounds great, thanks.
I'll second that.
Any further discussions? All in favor?
All right.
Tina?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. Thanks, Brian. 8F, Fire Board 2023 budget. Brian again.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I was going to mute myself. Yes, we had the fire board meeting on Tuesday, and we were talking budget. We need to approve a 2023 budget because the townships have to certify their levies in March of each year. So this March they have to certify their 2023 budget. Chief Boris had put together a budget that was is a 13% increase, and that is because we need to do the roof as soon. Every time we get a storm rolling through, we have another claim with the League of Minnesota Cities, and they've been asking us to, when are you going to just replace the roof? And we keep telling them, yep, we're working towards that. So that is the bulk of this 13% increase that they're requesting this year, along with radios. The radios are at end of life. We're not sure about county funding, but regardless, they have to do the radios, the next year. So this would be, we envision this to be a 1-year spike, 13%, and then back down to the usual 3% or whatever it might be at that point. But it would be a substantial dollar amount for the city of Zumbrota for 2023, but I think it's needed. We got to get that roof done. And moving forward, we will take a closer look at fire board reserves and look for a policy on how much they need in reserves. And we're also going to look at redoing the joint powers agreement, or relooking at that. It's been about 5 years or so since it. So we're going to take a look at that as well. But increase wise, they're looking for a 13% increase. And at this point, staff is going to recommend moving forward with that 13%.
My question is, so it goes up 13%, and then is it going to stay at that amount and then go up another 3, or is it going to go back down and then go up another 3?
No, once it's there at 13%, we won't back it down 10% the next time to get back to that 3. It would stay at the level it is, and then the increases above that would continue.
Why do they? I'm not trying to be combative or anything, but why do they need to keep it at that 10% over of, then we're going to have to, so then going forward, we're going to have that 13% more than what, what's that going to go towards? The roof still, or what is that 13% going to go towards?
No,
I think it's a one-time 13%. It's only 2023's budget, and then it goes back to 3% until they.
He just said no,
Yeah.
it does not.
it does.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, well,
I think he
yep.
misunderstood you.
Are you sure?
No,
So let's talk dollar amount. So a 13% increase over what we paid this year is about
yeah.
$8,700. Is that right, Kim? That $8,700 is not going to go away next year. So I think Sarah's right. It'll go up to that level, and it won't go down from that level. But moving forward, the increases would be minimal or much smaller.
So we're going to have to come up, we're going to keep it at that level. So we'll have to keep paying $10,000 more each year.
Yeah, that's the new norm. I guess that's a good way to put that. So you're correct, Sarah.
Okay. I don't know if I mean, how many years will it take for us to save up to do a roof? Or is that one time of $8,000 gonna do the roof?
Yeah, that's a great point. That is designed to pay for the roof and yeah, you're right. I guess it wasn't discussed going down from there. It would go,
You know,
Yeah.
a 3% increase the next year, but back down to the original amount is all I'm saying.
right, it would,
I think the intent was to take the money after the roof is paid for and put it toward the radio and radios and the capital equipment because the cost of that is going up so greatly. We're still struggling to stay pace.
Okay.
The radios alone are $150,000.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think that's what they're thinking was.
Okay.
yep, it was discussed that it would, you know, whatever is left or moving forward, I suppose it would go into the capital equipment, which is hard to keep up with anyway. So, you know, and the 3% increases haven't kept up with inflation over the years either. So that would have to be looked at some point. But this big increase this year will push that down the road a ways as well.
Okay.
So I need a motion to approve the fire board 2023 budget.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I guess I'll second it.
We have to abstain.
Yeah. I was
And-
gonna wonder about that.
Any further discussion?
That's fine. Just wanted to point that out, that it's not going back down.
Well,
Okay,
all in favor? Tina,
Aye.
abstain,
Aye.
Aye.
oppose, passes 3-0-2. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Tina, for being the president of the fire board for the last year. Yay. 8G, minor subdivision for Whitmire. Dylan.
Yeah, so last month, property owner Aaron Whitmer applied for a minor subdivision of this parcel. And for reference, it's on Walnut Street and State Highway 58 on the corner there. The application supplemental materials appease the requirements of our planning and zoning ordinances. Public hearing was held January 11th of 2022, and there's a site map in your guys' packet if you need to look at it. For reference, this is also the property that was annexed last fall. Just a couple months ago, we annexed it into the city. So it's currently zoned C2 highway commercial. The reasoning for the minor subdivision is to sell the larger northern tract, parcel A, in your site map, while keeping the smaller southern portion, which is parcel B, due to existing business located on it. Overall, city staff and the planning commission recommend approval of the minor subdivision. So we're going to be looking for a motion to approve the minor subdivision for Aaron Whitmer.
Any more questions or discussions for Dylan?
No, I'll make a motion to approve that minor subdivision.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Tina?
I don't know. Am I? Maybe. Okay. I can't figure out where it is, so.
It's right across from Houghton, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Right behind the livestock building.
Great, thank you. I'm good.
Opposed? Passes 5-0-0. Thanks, Dylan. Reports. You want to go first, Brian?
Sure. Mike had mentioned a couple of these during his presentation, but Jefferson, the second public meeting for Jefferson Drive, January 26, 6 p.m. We've sent out letters to abutting properties. We put it on our website. I believe it's in the paper. It was in the paper yesterday. So there's lots of notification. I'm thinking we'll probably get a pretty good crowd for that one. Lots of questions. We'll have the big map there. You know, do a presentation first, WHKS will, then we'll have the big map all laid around the table, kind of like we did last time. Everybody can come up and look at their property, their area, make comments, and then WHKS will write those comments right on the map, so they've got those, and we'll take everything into consideration. Millen 6 reconstruction. we would like to get an agreement in place to start design on this. And then after that, we'd like to have a meeting, with the public to talk about timing and when we might be able to do that project. We've already begun, we've done some cammering there, looking at the sewer, the laterals and all of that to decide what scope of work we're going to go to. We'll have some decisions to make along the way as a council and staff as well as to what the scope of the project will be. Fully reconstruct, mill and overlay, how much of the sewer do we do? Water is relatively new, but there's some thought of once you get into it, you might as well just do everything because you're tearing the road up and you don't want to have to tear it up for a break at some point. So anyway, working on an agreement with that. We're bringing that forward to the council sometime soon to kind of get that in stone that we will be doing those roads in the near future. Mike did mention the water looping as well. We'd like to get it as far as behind DFA as soon as we can to alleviate some water issues. They get some stuff out of that tower from the water coming from that tower. It's disintegrating from the inside. So we like to get them on the looping. And then we will keep working on bringing it under the highway and all the way through in one of two routes across the highway. Again, in the near future, we're waiting on some legislature action on some possible dollars with that. So that's kind of the holdup with the second part of it. So that's all I had.
Sounds good. Thanks, Brian. Chief?
I have nothing.
Matt? Dylan?
Yeah, I mentioned last month the EDA is looking to fill 2 vacancies on the EDA, and one, Dave Dolan has expressed interest and will be writing a letter of interest. And, people in this room may know him a little bit more than I do, but former city council member. So that's likely going to be one of the vacancies filled, and we're still looking to fill the other one.
Perfect. Thanks, Dylan. Kim?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
James? Mike? Tina?
I'd just like to thank you, Mayor, for filling in my shoes at the fire board meeting on Tuesday since I can't leave my house. Good job.
You're welcome. Thank you. I have nothing. Sarah?
No, I'm good.
Chris?
I have nothing.
Bob?
Nothing tonight.
Meeting adjourned. Have a good trip, Ryan. Stay safe, healthy. Tina?
Thank you. I'm gonna look to stay warm too.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.